Okay, so this is the key to the first in-class worksheet, number 1A, and what we're doing here is solving this linear equation. Now, notice that this linear equation has fractions in it, and so if you notice there, basically, you can think of this as, on this side, two fractions. You have this rational expression, and you have this rational expression. And over here, you can think of this as one rational expression, x minus 1 divided by 1, or you can think of this as two rational expressions, x over 1 minus 1 over 1. But in any case, if you look at the denominators, this is 3, this is 2, and whatever you think of this, either one fraction or two separate fractions, the denominators are 1. So you want to clear the fractions. So the first thing, the idea here is to clear your fractions when you have denominators. And so basically that means is that you want all ones in the denominators. So you got to multiply both sides by a number that 3 and 2 will go into. And so it could be any number, but you want to use the least, the smallest, because it will make things easier for you. So the least common denominator of 3, 2, and 1, this denominator down here is 1, is 6. So that's your least common denominator. Now once you find your least common denominator, you're going to multiply both sides of this equation by 6. So remember, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Now since the left-hand side has two fractions in it, two rational expressions, we'll put that in parentheses, just like this. And then over here, I'm going to put that in parentheses as well, since there are two terms. All right, and so multiply this side by 6 and this side by 6. Now notice I did introduce parentheses, and so now you have to remove the parentheses, so we can use the distributive property next. And so every rational expression is going to be multiplied by 6. And so I'm going to get 6 times 2x minus 1 divided by 3 plus 6 times a half equals, and then 6x minus, and then 6 times the negative 1 is a negative 6. So 6x minus 6. Now you got to be careful in this one, because if you're not careful, what's going to happen is that you're going to reduce these. Remember, the whole idea of multiplying by the LCD is to get these denominators to be 1s. 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2, and if you're not careful, you're going to say 2 times 2x is 4x, and forget about this. Every term in this numerator has to be multiplied by 2, so put that in parentheses. When you have more than one term in the numerator, put that in parentheses. See, this is one term, I don't need it. Alright, now you can distribute again. Okay, and then let's go ahead and reduce next. So reduce, 3 into 3 is 1, 3 into 6 is 2, 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 6 is 3. Now what I'm going to do, rather than using distributive property next, I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite what I see. So I get 2 times 2x minus 1 plus, and then 3 times 1 is 3 equal 6x minus 6. Now I'm going to use the distributive property. So in many cases, you can use the distributive property quite often, and then you can combine like terms quite often. So I get 4x minus 2 plus 3 equal 6x minus 6. All right, now I'm going to combine like terms. And so I get 4x plus 1 equals 6x minus 6. And now I'm going to, since this is linear, I'm going to bring all the variables one side, constants to the other. So it's easier to bring the x's to the left. I'm sorry, to the right, since 6 is positive and it's bigger than 4. So I'm going to subtract 4x. And notice what I'm using here is the addition property of equality. And so I'm going to combine like terms. So remember, the addition property of equality says what I add to one side, I add to the other. So if I add a negative 4x on both to one side, I got to add a negative 4x to the other side. So I subtract 4x, I subtract 4x. And then combine like terms, 4x minus 4x is 0, I'm left with 1, equal 6x minus 4x is 2x, and then minus 6. and I'm going to bring the constants to the other side. So I'm going to add 6. So I'm doing the addition property of equality again. So here and here. And then combine like terms. So 1 plus 6 is 7 equals, this is 0, 2x. And then to go from here to here, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. To get x by itself, I'm going to use the multiplication property of equality. And then reduce. Alright, so I'm going to divide, but to get x by itself, we're now multiplying by 2. The opposite multiply by 2 is to divide by 2. So I get 7 halves equals 2 divided by 2 is 1. That's the idea of that reducing. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 1 times x is x. And there's your solution. Alright, just before we finish though, remember all these equations. See this equation, this equation, this equation, this equation, they're all equivalent. They're called equivalent equations, meaning that each of these has a solution. So remember, there's no way you could have looked at this and determined what the solution is. So to find a solution, you're gonna use the idea of solving, which is the process that we're going through using all these properties. So that's what we mean by solving an equation. So we're going to use some properties to find a solution to the original equation. All right, so we're using these properties to make this equation simpler, make equivalent equations, so that way at some point I can get to x by itself. All right, so that takes care of the key to 1a.